Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mrs. Ross Does Math. Today the class we are focusing on is Math 7, and the lesson is number 8. This is similar and congruent figures. Go ahead and get out your notes and let's get ready to review them. So, like I just said, our topic for today is Lesson 8, and our focus is similar and congruent figures. Now, we're going to talk about what it means for a figure to be similar and what it means for a figure to be congruent. These are two new vocabulary words. Our essential question for today is, how can I recognize congruent and similar figures and find their scale factor? That is also another new vocabulary word that we will be talking about today. Let me put that on focus. Okay, and here we go. So our first vocab word today is a similar figure. Similar figures are two figures that have the same shape but are different sizes. In math, we often use symbols to identify different things, and our symbol for similar figures is that little line right here. Now, many of you know of this from early on as being approximate. What we're now going to be doing is using this symbol for similar. So when we talk about a set of similar figures and we're writing out mathematically what they would look like, an example would be triangle ABC, and again, that's our symbol for triangle, is similar to triangle DEF. Now again, in words, that means that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. And again, a similar figure are two figures that have the same shape, that's why they're both triangles, but are different sizes. Our second vocab word for today is corresponding parts. Corresponding parts are parts on similar figures that match up. Now, once again, we'll talk a little bit more about corresponding parts once we get to our examples later on. Next, we have congruent. Congruent in math means equal in measure. And you will see this symbol for congruent. Now, because it's a little difficult to see down here in the green, I'm going to write it over on the side as well. So again, it's an equal sign with a little squiggly above it. And again, that is our symbol for congruent. So when we're writing things, we could say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Last vocab word for today is scale factor. The scale factor is the ratio of one figure to another in simplest form. So again, a ratio is our key word here, and ratios can be written as fractions, like A over B. They could also be written with a colon, like A to B, or they could be written in word form, like A to B. When you're writing your ratio of the scale factor, any one of these three forms is appropriate. Now, once again, if you guys need to pause any of this video, please do so. If you need to go back, please do so as well. Now, moving on, when we're taking a look at congruent figures or trying to determine if our figures are similar, we can determine if two shapes are similar. And again, I'm going to underline the word similar here. And again, we can determine if two shapes are similar if the corresponding angles are congruent. And corresponding angles, again, are parts on different triangles or different rectangles, but they're in the same location. And the corresponding sides are proportional. So remember, congruent means equals to. So the corresponding angles are equals to each other, and the corresponding sides are proportional. Now remember, proportional, once again, is a ratio. So if all sides of our figure are the same ratio, then our figure is proportional. So I have a figure here, and this particular figure is triangle ABC, and I also have triangle MNP. Now I didn't put O in here because O looks a lot like 0, so that's why it's MNP. Now when we take a look at these two figures, our ultimate goal is to determine if they are similar. That is our task. So what we're going to do is first begin by identifying the corresponding angles. Now once again, our corresponding angles are angles in the same location on each figure that are equal to each other. So when we take a look at our corresponding angles here, okay, in my first triangle, I have a 60-degree angle. This box means a 90-degree angle, and I have a 30-degree angle. Here, the corresponding angle to A is M. Because they are both in the top of our triangle and they are both 60 degrees, they are equal to each other and corresponding. So I'm going to write angle, and that is our math symbol for angle. So angle A is congruent to angle M. Once again, this is our math symbol for for angles. You'll also see that it's similar to the greater than, less than. In this particular case, it's greater than. Next, we also have angle B is congruent to angle N for Nicholas. So I'm going to write angle B is congruent to angle N. Lastly, we have C. C is congruent to P because they are both in the bottom right-hand corners of our figure and they are both 30 degrees. So I'm going to write angle C is congruent to angle P. Next, I need to write which sides are corresponding. Now, corresponding sides are, again, the same side on each figure that has the same ratio. So here, AB would be one side, and the same side on my opposite figure would be MN. So my corresponding sides that is AB and MN. Now, because these are sides, I'm going to go ahead and put a line above. Next, my bottoms here, BC, its corresponding side is NP. So I'm going to put BC and NP. Lastly, what we call the hypotenuse of our triangle, or the longest leg of a triangle, it is AC on this figure, and it is MP on our second figure. So we are going to write AC and MP. Now, the last part of this that we have is we need to determine if our figure is proportional. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take all of our corresponding sides that we gathered information for, and we are going to put their numbers into a ratio, and we're going to simplify it. So AB over MN. Those were my two corresponding sides. Now AB was 3. MN is 6. So I'm going to simplify 3 over 6. That's going to give me 1/2. We always want to simplify these. Now the next one was BC and NP. So I'm going to write BC over NP. That is 4 over 8. And once again, that reduces to 1/2. Lastly, we have AC and we have MP. So AC over MP, and that is 6 over 12, and that is 1/2. Because their ratios are all identical and their corresponding angles are all congruent, these two figures are similar. So you're going to write, yes, these figures are similar. Now, one other piece of information that we need is our scale factor. Now, the scale factor is the simplified ratio. So, their scale factor is 1/2. And once again, we can write it as a fraction. We can write it as 1:2. We could also write it as 1, 2, 2. 1/2 and the 1:2, though, are the preferred ways to write this. So again, we have corresponding angles. Those are angles that are the same in each figure. We have corresponding sides, which are sides on each figure that are corresponding or similar to each other. And then to determine if our figures are similar, we take the corresponding sides and we put them into a ratio. If they all have the same ratio in simplified form, then our figures are similar. And our scale factor, that is that ratio. So, if you have any questions, please go through, leave me a comment, send me a message, pause this video, rewind this video, do whatever you need to. Now lastly, we're going to move into the summary. Now once again, I've left you guys with a sentence frame to start out your summary, and it begins with, figures are congruent when, ... Tell me when figures are congruent, and figures are similar when ... Go ahead and finish that out. Now, the last piece I'm going to go over with you guys today is an introduction to your assignment. So, your assignment for this lesson is this one here. Similar figures and congruent figures. This is lesson 8. This is part of our organ focus on proportionality curriculum. So please remember to put your name, the date, and the period. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys started with numbers 1 and number 5 as well today. Okay. So for number 1, it says, for each pair of figures below, find the corresponding sides and the corresponding angles to the ones identified. Okay. So in this, CA, that is this side right here, corresponds to what side on our other figure? In this case, that would be SU. So I'm going to write SU, and I'm going to put a line over it because it's a side. AR is our next one. AR corresponds to UN. So we're going to write that. Lastly, CR corresponds to SN. Sorry about that. Next, we need to take a look at the angles. Angle C is congruent to what angle? Well, if angle C is 60 degrees, the angle that's congruent to that in our other figure is S. So I'm going to write S right here. Angle A here is a box. That box means it's 90 degrees. In our other figure, that would be U. So I'm going to write U. And lastly, angle R is 30 degrees. It's in the bottom right-hand corner. So the other figure where it's 30 degrees is N. So I'm going to write N here. Next, our question is, are the triangles congruent or are they similar? And we need to explain. Now remember, our figures are similar when they all have the same ratio. So here, we have 3 over 3. That gives us 1. We have 5.2 to 5.2. That gives us 1. And we have 6 over 6. That also gives us 1. Now here, each one of these numbers is identical to the other. Now, because they are identical, they're equals to each other. So in this particular case, this set of triangles is congruent. Now again, we need to explain this. So we're going to state the triangles, and I'm going to use the symbol for triangles. So the triangles are congruent because, and I'm using the shorthand for because, their angles are identical and the sides are 2. Okay, so again, the angles are congruent, or the triangles are congruent because the angles are identical and the sides are 2. Now the last one I said I was going to do with you today is number 5. So I'm going to roll this up. Now number 5 asks us to determine the scale factor for each pair of similar figures. Now for number 5, I have 2 parallelograms. That's what these figures are. And I have 15 millimeters and 24 millimeters. Now our scale factor is the ratio in simplest form. So I'm going to set 15 over 24. So I'm going to write 15 over 24. Now a number that can go into both 15 and 24 is 3. So I'm going to divide each one of these by 3. Now when I do that, I get 5/8. Now 5/8 can't simplify any further, so that is our scale factor. Now again, I set these two numbers over each other because they are both on the same side of our figure. They are corresponding parts. Now if this 24 was on a different side, say the 24 was here, I couldn't do that. I'd have to put a number that's on that same side. So as you're setting up for your scale factor in these similar figures, make sure that if the number is on the bottom, you put it over another number that is also on the bottom. All right, well, once again, if you guys have any questions at all, please leave me a comment, send me a message, rewind this video, contact me. This is Mrs. Ross Does Math.